Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm privileged to have a very successful professional manager turned entrepreneur, author, and speaker, Craig Lemasters, with me. He's from the US, but I understand now he's sitting in Puerto Rico. So, Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Really excited about our conversation. Love the work that you're doing, and for me, it's a real privilege to chat with you today and your audience.
Thank you. So, Craig is the CEO of GXG. He's an author and speaker of Rapid Cycle Learning. He's the former CEO of a $5 billion Fortune 500 subsidiary. He's an entrepreneur, investor, and board member. And I always love authors. He's the author of a book called Unstuck: How to Unlock and Activate the Wisdom of Others. So, Craig, tell me, what would you say are three key milestones in your career or your life?
Yes, so my milestones start with my marriage. Actually, let's start with number one. But in all seriousness, I met my wife in college, and that changed a whole bunch in my life. Ashutosh, she's an amazing person, doctor, mother of our four kids, and a real partner for me. So I'd say milestone number one there. And then second, in terms of work, I think the milestone for me was the first 5 years that I worked. I ended up being with this company for 27 years, which is pretty unusual in today's terms. When I do talks and I mention that, people look at me like I'm some kind of strange person. But the first 5 years I would group together as my career milestone. And the reason is I became just fascinated with growing businesses. I mean, there's so many paths you can go down, companies, and do different things. And I became just fascinated with, could we take something at an early stage and grow it and create something new, and almost obsessed with it. It was so much fun, and the company gave me chances to do that. And the reason I say, there's other just wonderful things that I got to experience in 27 years. But when I think about your question regarding a milestone, that changed the inflection of sort of what I wanted to go do. And then the third part for me is I circle back to my family is we've had been so privileged to have four amazing kids who are now not kids, three grown adults that are working, and a senior in high school. Fantastic. So we're about to be empty nesters. So those are my milestones. Fantastic. Yeah.
What great, incredible journey you seem to have had. So tell me, you were in a very lucrative corporate career. What made you start off on your own?
Most of my friends still think I'm kind of crazy, to be honest with you. Not many people walk away from a great CEO job, but the simple answer is, Ashutosh, that I felt incredibly blessed that I got these opportunities, and I got to be CEO for 11 years. And in U.S. big company standards, that's a long time. And for public companies, we call that 44 quarters to be exact. So it's a long time. But I got to a place where I believed I had an amazing succession plan with wonderful people in place. And that was number one. Number two, I had a burning sort of desire that, why was I so fortunate to learn these nuggets that helped me basically double a very big company? And I just felt like I should go share that with other leaders. Because I don't know about you, and you've had some amazing stuff building big companies. And I use the word stuck a lot. The book's called Unstuck for a reason. But when we get stuck on really hard stuff, it's pretty miserable. It really is hard. And I just thought, wouldn't it be cool to go sort of later in life and just share a few things that I learned that really helped me? And so that's what I did. I walked away from the big company life, and I told somebody the other day that, and I mean this, I had the best big company job anybody could have. Great board, great people, got to expand globally, which was a passion. And now I've got the best little company job. So I'm doubly fortunate.
Fabulous. So, Craig, let's talk a little bit about your book.
Sure.
Unstuck: How to Unlock and Activate the Wisdom of Others. First, tell me, how did you chance upon this name? Why Unstuck?
Well, I'm not a consultant or an advisor. I do that work now, but it's not my background and training. So I don't use fancy consulting words. As an operator, I just ran a company. I just used the terms that meant something to me. And years ago, I started using the word stuck. I'm like, as leaders, can we just be honest, particularly when we try to do new things outside of our core business, we tend to get stuck. Meaning, and here's what I mean by stuck. It's not that we're not trying. We are trying. We're working hard. We're experimenting, whatever it might be. But the reality is we're not moving very fast. And most importantly, we're not getting to the goal.
Okay.
So I started using this term stuck. And so I had a client actually 3 years ago who had tried our little bit unusual methodology. It worked. And as a CEO, he literally said, you talk about, you kept telling me I was stuck on this stuff. And I did it. He goes, you should write a book about getting unstuck because you should share this business strategy. And it was very funny because like most great things that have happened to me, I didn't think them up. Ashutosh, this was somebody that advised me to do this. And it's a simple book. It's a short book because our methodology is simple. So that was 3 years ago. So I just got a little bit obsessed talking to leaders about being stuck, but there's a path to get unstuck. So that became the book. Yeah.
Fabulous. And, what are the steps, your methodology, to get unstuck?
Yeah, so we try to condense it down to sort of, depending on how you bucket it, 3 or 4 steps. The first is, and most important actually, is humility. And I actually I devoted a whole chapter to humility. It's a short chapter, but it's super important because I believe this is the single biggest inhibitor of leaders in their journey to get unstuck. Again, I'm talking about going from your core business to new things, which we all need to do at some point. And the humility is important because to go seek outside wisdom, which is the whole theme, and I define wisdom as the intersection of both knowledge and experience. So I use a little formula in the book, W equals K times E, but it's really important because it has to be both. So it starts with humility. That's number one. Because if you think about it, if we're not humble enough to admit we're stuck, we're not going to be humble enough to go seek outside wisdom. So that's number one. Second is we push really hard to, I call it, define the destination. And again, simple terms. Can we just call where we are today point A and where we're going point B? And I don't care if it's a financial destination, a new product, a new distribution, a new country, it doesn't matter. But it's shocking to me, Ashutosh, I've gotten to work with hundreds of companies around the world the last 3 years. I thought it was just my company that struggled with this. And everybody does. Even big companies. Some of our clients are Fortune 10 companies in the US. And I just tell them, hey, just tell me about your B. They're like, oh, well, let me get the deck out. Let me get the PowerPoint. No, I don't want a PowerPoint. Just describe it to me. So that's step number 2. And then as a part of that, and this is sort of our secret sauce, when you have the B, picture it as an ecosystem, right? We all draw an ecosystem for things. So in the middle of the ecosystem is B. That's our destination. And then all I ask people, and again, we describe all of this in the book. You don't need GXG to do this. You can do it yourself. Just draw 3 bubbles of an ecosystem around your B. Now be really honest about what are the pieces of wisdom, knowledge, and experience that are imperatives to get to B. That's the next step. And then, you know what? Get granular about what that wisdom looks like. How much knowledge, how much experience. And then we teach people how to go find it and how to activate it, hence the subtitle of the book. So those are the steps. And I'll tell you, Ashutosh, it's not a terribly high-tech, sexy business model. This is done on flip charts, whiteboards, virtual or in person. But the one thing I can promise your listeners is if you'll take it to heart and do these steps on the hard things you're stuck on, I promise you it works. Getting that wisdom into the equation that you don't have, that honest assessment, I promise you it will work.
Fantastic. It's so interesting to hear you say this. It just takes me back to 1980. I was 22 years old, and I had an American boss. And I remember him telling me, if you don't blow your own trumpet, nobody's going to blow it for you. And now you're saying, have a lot of humility. So it's very interesting how, management concept seems to be changing, but, that's fantastic. So let's keep moving on. So, if you're going to be interacting with me to understand whether I'm stuck, what is the kind of process you will follow?
I have some fun with this actually.
Yeah.
So, because I get a lot of pushback. A lot of people get offended. Oh, I'm not
Mhm.
stuck on anything. I'm like, that's fine. Well, if you're a public
Sure.
company, I can go read everything about you, and I'll point out the things that I think you're stuck on.
Mhm.
But I put it in a book. I call it the circle of stuck, just to have some fun with it, because
Okay.
I believe there's some symptoms, and I've been fortunate to give talks to hundreds of places on this topic, and here are the symptoms that I think are what I call the circle of stuck. When
Mhm.
we try to go do new stuff, what's the first thing that we do, right?
Mhm.
Everybody does it. We have a meeting, and the meeting, we tend to have multiple meetings, and it gets bigger and bigger. We include
Mhm.
more people. We publish list of priorities. Okay, so that's where we all start with, and then we start a bizarre trait of, and this is the first real symptoms meetings we have to do, is we start carbon copying or CCing people on all of these notes and meetings.
Mhm.
And so I started asking CEOs about this, because that really bothered me in my company, because it felt like it was just a diversion tactic. It's like, why do we need all these people involved? I had a CEO tell me recently that they have 350 CCs on some of their emails. So that's a symptom of stuck. The next thing we do is create a new vocabulary, right? I call it this buzzword salad.
Okay.
And again, these are all diversionary tactics. We're not actually solving the problem. We tend to bring in traditional consultants, nothing wrong with them, but you're going to get hundreds of pages of research and information, nothing wrong with that, but it usually doesn't get you unstuck. And then here's the kicker. We get to the end and we finally start to maybe prioritize some things, and everyone panics. I call it, this will age me, but I call it the moonwalk, like Michael Jackson days, because I say, Ashutosh, I want you to own this. And guess what? There's risk involved in it, so you sort of back up. And so most companies do this in a circular fashion or some form of it.
Correct.
I would argue, if you look at your organization and you're doing any of these a lot, you're probably stuck. And only this wisdom, this bolus of wisdom that comes crashing in is going to get you unstuck. And the reason is very simple. These are just people that have done it. If I want to go get in the pharmacy business, if I just go decide to do that when I was running a big insurance company, guess what? I would get stuck pretty quickly.
Amazing.
If I really needed to be in the pharmacy business and I had you sitting beside me and three Ashutosh that had a relevant knowledge and experience, you think I'd get in the pharmacy business faster and better? Of course I would.
Amazing.
That's what we have to do. We have to do that intentionally. So that's the diagnosis tool we use.
Fabulous. And tell me, this is from an organizational perspective. Can't we use the same concept in our personal lives?
Oh, absolutely. And quite frankly, I wrote this and started working corporately, and I've had numerous people over the years either ask me that or say that, hey, this is great, but I've used it. Yeah, if you think about just relationships in general, certainly kids and parenting, maybe faith journeys, all kinds of things, what better lesson than on, because those are hard topics that we get stuck on, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
Shouldn't we go seek wisdom? And again, the key of the wisdom is it's just simply people that have gone before us, right? And we do a lot of that intuitively. All I've tried to be, and this is the simplicity of our business model, I just saying, be intentional about it. Identify. So if I have a parenting challenge, and I'm really specific about what that challenge is, I bet you if I spent 15 minutes thinking through my network, who in my network has actually conquered that really well, well, reach out to them intentionally and say, hey, help me. And here's the cool part, Ashutosh, people love sharing their wisdom. But yeah, the personal application is just as real. And it makes me super happy, quite frankly, now that this has become useful, not just in our professional lives. Yeah.
So, again, when you look at all the stuff that you're doing, and I was trying to read about rapid cycle learning a little bit. How does rapid cycle learning relate with the Unstuck methodology?
Yeah, so rapid cycle learning is, I trademarked it because what we saw happening, and again, everything I do is based on me. A friend of mine told me about this concept. He was an entrepreneur. So we actually built it when I was running Assurant. And one of the things that struck me, because the reality is most of us end up getting unstuck. I mean, you're going to get there. We're going to grind through it or whatever. But in today's world, it's never fast enough. So what I became obsessed with, how can I get there faster? So here's the linkage that I want to share with you. If we think about about, I call them unstuck leaders. These leaders that are super agile, we're making better decisions faster. I think the only time we don't do that is when we lack confidence. Okay. We have a lot of confidence in our core business. My guess is you could make every decision you needed to do about retail pharmacy and in your world. But boy, if you got outside of that and said, Ashutosh, let's go make coffee together, right? Let's go build a coffee company. You would slow down because you didn't have confidence. So the only way we build the confidence is through this wisdom. So what I found was when we put the wisdom in the room, and we facilitate it through advisory boards and this kind of unusual coaching methodology. But what I found was it wasn't, you still got unstuck, but it was the speed at which we got unstuck. And so that's when we coined the term rapid cycle learning, because there's so many ways to learn. What I cared about was we have a lot of pressure to produce in these roles. How can we do it faster? And what I saw was the speed of decision making went up exponentially, not incrementally. So we came up with the idea of rapid cycle learning.
Fabulous. And, based on coming back to the book of unlocking and activating my wisdom, can you give me an example of someone you worked with, without names, of course, unless it's confidential, how it worked and what was the result?
Yeah, so where I found this methodology was in the digital transformation work I was trying to do at Assurant and the company that I ran. So, and we were challenged with it. We knew we had to be a great digital company. We defined our destination B. We did the circles. That's when we came up with the 3 bubbles. And one of the, I'll give you a perfect example. One of the big bubbles was data, which you'd say, okay, well, everyone's got to be good at data. And this is 6 years ago. So this was still fairly early on. And we had horrible both collection of data, we didn't know how to consolidate it, and we didn't know how to use it, certainly didn't know how to monetize it or any of that, right? So one of the original people, we used an advisory board format, so we went out and got this guy that was running data analytics for Sabre. I don't know if you know Sabre. It was American Airlines data analytics company, the best of the best at that day. And this guy actually agreed to come on this little advisory board to share his wisdom on how a company like ours, completely different industry, should think about consolidating and using data. And I'll tell you, that's one of, I had 3 other board members that joined us, but that's an example because they all did the same thing of how it changed forever how I thought about leaders should learn. Because within about 3 months, me personally, my senior leadership team, and the people running our data, their wisdom went through the roof, rapid cycle learning. And guess what? In 9 months, we actually built a separate digital company. And the fastest growing part of the company was with working with Google, Amazon, and eBay. Now think about this. This is a 100-year-old insurance company, right? Speed for us was a decade, not days. Okay. And so that's an example. That was an individual that changed our trajectory. And you know what? He's still a dear friend even 6 years from now. He works for a different company. And for him, he said it was one of the richest things he had ever done in his work life.
Amazing.
And that's to me, I have so many of them, but that's one's near and dear to my heart because it impacted Assurant, my company, and it changed the way I thought about it, and it led me to go do this and share it with others.
Fabulous. What a great response. So one more question for you before I move to the next segment. Run large companies, had amazing, number of people probably worked for you. Now on your own, doing your own things. What are some of the core values you believe in?
Yeah, so for me, overarching is my faith. Take my faith very seriously, as my family does. So that has been completely the guidepost for me, really through all of my adult life. I would say, as a subset of that, I've said something, fortunately, that I was taught very early in my work life that I've never wavered from is if we care as much about how we do things as what we do, everything works out, Ashutosh. Everything does. And I challenge myself and everybody around me all the time is, are we doing the right thing in terms of how we're doing it, not just the what? And I think if you get either one out of balance, it's very hard to build a profitable company long term. Very hard. So that's what's important to me.
Well said. Well said. So now I'm going to move to the next segment of our conversation, which is some questions for you personally.
Oh, wow. Let's go.
Craig, as you look back at life and as you look ahead at all the things that you are going to be doing.
Yeah.
At your stage in life today, what does success mean to Craig?
Super simple for me. I'm all about impact now.
Okay.
I mean, what I care most about and what success is for me is, and it doesn't have to be at scale. If it is, Ashutosh, that's fine. But I want to have impact on leaders that are stuck on hard stuff. And here's why. I have a super big compassion for leaders. These are hard jobs. They're hard jobs. Most people don't know that. They see the income, they see the public persona, but they're very hard jobs. So success for me is if I can put a smile on the face of a leader and see them get unstuck, that's success for me.
Fabulous. And the follow-up question to that is, you keep pushing yourself to do so many things. Who or what inspires you?
Yeah, I go back to your first question on sort of my milestones, and I've been very fortunate, 34 years of marriage, to have a wife that is very high energy, cares about people, cares about impact. So we're great partners in this journey, and she inspires me, every day. I'd say the other one is a great biblical figure for those that are familiar with this, and it was Paul's sidekick, a guy named Barnabas. And Barnabas was known as the great encourager, and often it's the person off to the side that does this, and I just want to be an encourager to people now.
Fabulous. My next question is on failure, from the part of the world that I come, in Asia. Parents don't teach children it's okay to fail. We're always taught you got to be first, head of the line, etc., etc. My question to you is that what have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
Yeah, well, two things. One, I was fortunate that I had bosses, and the reason I stayed at my company for so long, I had bosses that allowed me to fail. They gave me opportunities. My first P&L job was at 26 years old.
Wow.
Now, they had guardrails, so I didn't know it at the time, but I couldn't run the truck off the road.
Correct.
But it felt like I could. And you know what? From that age all the way up to probably yesterday, I've had so many things that I've done wrong. I look back on and whatever. But what I learned from that early stage is it's okay. As long as there's some guardrails and we don't run the thing in the ditch. And so all of mine along the way, and actually China, as I mentioned, I didn't mention it earlier, but I did digital with my business model, and I worked on China because China later in my work life was originally my biggest failure. I thought I would be the only U.S. business person to build a profitable business in China quickly because nobody else has really. And guess what? I failed like them, and then we got better after 5 years, right? And but what I learned from that, to the simple answer, is I became obsessed with the topic of grit. And if you haven't, or your listeners haven't dive into Angela Duckworth's research on grit, please go do it. It's a game changer on personal and company culture. That's where I learned grit.
Fabulous. So I've got time for one more question, and I'm going to ask this to you because this is for the thousands of young people who will listen to you and me talk and to all your incredible words of advice. What would your advice be to a young individual who is starting off on their corporate journey, and looking ahead to the next 30, 40 years?
Yep. I would say, please get out a blank sheet of paper, write your B in the middle, your destination, draw 3 bubbles of knowledge and experience that you don't have today, and then network like crazy. Talk to people older than you that have done these things. They will counsel and mentor you like you cannot imagine if you will do that. I wish I had done it at 26. I wouldn't have had as many failures. And so I would really, really employ young folks to take my little wisdom formula to heart. I know it works. And so get out your paper and draw your bubbles.
And get unstuck.
That's what happens. You get unstuck, and it's a blast. There's nothing better, because the ancillary benefit your younger listeners will get is they will build a network. When you ask people to share wisdom, it's not like playing tennis with them, or a sport, which is fun, or going to a cocktail networking reception, which is fun. This is very intimate. And I promise you, at a very young age, I wish I had done this, because my network would be multiple times bigger than it is today.
I agree.
If you start young, people will love it, and you'll build an amazing network.
Fabulous. Craig, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I'm going to be ordering my copy of Unstuck on Amazon. I'm sure it's available on Amazon.
It is available.
To learn some more, but I wish you lots and lots of success in the incredible way you're giving back so much of your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And likewise, thank you for having me on. I love the work you're doing, Ashutosh, and it's been a privilege to share some of this with you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.